This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israeli leaders pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II and her inspirational legacy. And mixed messages from America on support for the Iranian nuclear deal. And two unique archaeological finds from First Temple times. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. Israeli leaders paid tribute to Queen Elizabeth II after Great Britain's longest reigning monarch died at the age of 96. Tel Aviv lit up its city hall with the British flag. Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid sent condolences on behalf of the Israeli people and said on Twitter, she leaves behind an unparalleled legacy. Israeli President Isaac Herzog said in a statement that Queen Elizabeth was a historic figure. She lived history, she made history, and with her passing, she leaves a magnificent, inspirational legacy. And Defense Minister Benny Gantz tweeted that under her reign, UK-Israel relations flourished. Even though Queen Elizabeth visited dozens of countries, including some in the Middle East, she never visited Israel. But her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, and her sons, Prince Edward and then Prince Charles, did. And her grandson, Prince William, made history in 2018 when he became the first British royal to make an official visit to the Jewish state. The royal family has a special connection with the Jewish people. Princess Alice, the mother-in-law of Queen Elizabeth, is recognized as a righteous Gentile for saving a family during the Holocaust. She's buried on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. CBN's Brody Carter brings us this look at the life of the Queen.
Royal gun salutes, flowers, moments of silence, and heartfelt tributes are among the commemorations in Britain and worldwide, mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth II.
Because the Queen was respected around the world.
United Kingdom's Prime Minister Liz Truss hailed the Queen as the rock of modern Britain.
Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her.
A double rainbow appeared in the sky over Buckingham Palace shortly before the announcement of the Queen's death, news that stunned the public.
Shocked. I can't believe it. I'm gutted. Absolutely gutted.
Quite shocking, really. You kind of always knew it was coming, but when it happens, it's just sad.
Born April 21st, 1926 in London's Mayfair district, Queen Elizabeth was born to King George VI and became the Princess of Wales during the Second World War. And when her father died of cancer, the 25-year-old princess became queen in 1952.
Prime Minister Winston Churchill is among the dignitaries who watch as the Archbishop of Canterbury confirms Elizabeth's sovereignty by placing on her head the 6-pound King Edward's crown.
Known for her pageantry as a royal queen, her exemplary leadership, and her public statements of faith in Jesus Christ, Queen Elizabeth even developed a friendship founded in faith with the famous American evangelist Billy Graham.
For me, the teachings of Christ and my own personal accountability before God provide a framework in which I try to lead my life. I, like so many of you, have drawn great comfort in difficult times from Christ's words and example.
The monarch in Britain is in some ways the head of the Church of England, and she took that role very, very seriously.
Nicoletta Golace, historian of British history at the University of New Hampshire, says the Queen honored that position and remembered those who served her country in wartime.
She never missed a Remembrance Sunday when people remembered the veterans of the two world wars. In fact, this year she tried very hard to make it, but her mobility and health issues got in the way. But the other times, she only missed it when she was pregnant. She attended church services regularly, and as you said, she gave a warming and inspiring address to the nation every single Christmas.
And her handling of foreign relations, along with the pageantry of the crown, made her a beloved figure around the world. London Bridge is down. Those are the code words for the Queen's death, spoken Thursday by her private secretary to inform the Prime Minister and the Council, setting into motion the events leading up to the coronation of her son, King Charles III.
I think that this is going to shake Britain to the core, but it's also going to have an impact on people throughout the Commonwealth, some of whom looked upon her as a crown head, even though they were living in independent countries.
Great Britain recently celebrated the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, a commemoration of 70 years on the throne. Elizabeth ruled longer than any other monarch in British history. The Queen died at Balmoral Castle, her summer estate in the Scottish Highlands. That's where she's been since the month of July. Her death came shortly after an announcement from Parliament about her failing health, leading to a new monarch on the throne who will have a formal coronation, although he already took the throne upon his mother's death.
He is king because the minute the spirit left the Queen's body, he became the king. It is a mystical thing that happens.
Britain now begins 10 days of mourning. The Queen's body will be sent by train to King's Cross Station. Charles will be there with Prime Minister Truss, and the Queen will lie in state at Westminster Hall, and the funeral will take place at Westminster Abbey. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Mixed messages from America on renewing the Iranian nuclear deal are both confusing and frustrating for Israel. The Biden administration says the best way to keep an eye on the regime is through signing a deal, while visiting U.S. congressmen from both parties see another path. The U.S. believes a diplomatic approach is the best solution to this ongoing conflict with Iran, according to U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Tom Nides.
We would like to obviously extend the JCPOA, but under the terms that the Biden administration has laid out. We get into greater details of that later, but certainly it's an important thing that we care about deeply.
Nides told foreign journalists that President Biden would not tolerate a nuclear Iran.
The president has articulated many times we will not stand by to let the Iranians obtain a nuclear weapon. And the president has articulated this both to Prime Minister Lapid and to the leadership of this government that we will not tie Israel's hands to defend itself against Iranian aggression.
Supporters of re-entering the 2015 deal believe the original agreement effectively restrained Iran's nuclear capabilities, although military intelligence reports and UN inspectors have refuted that conclusion. A visiting bipartisan delegation of U.S. senators and congressmen stated opposition to any Iranian nuclear agreement.
In terms of the Iran nuclear agreement, there will be bipartisan opposition. It will be up to the administration as to whether or not they should enter into the agreement.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he and Democrat Senator Bob Menendez have put forth a different plan.
Senator Menendez and myself have offered an alternative to the JCPOA, allowing Iran and Sunni Arab nations to have nuclear power, but all their enrichment would be done outside the region, so you wouldn't have to worry about nuclear proliferation.
Menendez says any agreement must pass congressional review. If it does, he and Graham want additional legislation that would subject Iran to continuing reviews. And he says the International Atomic Energy Agency should investigate and draw a conclusion about undeclared Iranian sites.
That conclusion, I think, would only lead us to the fact that Iran did seek to produce nuclear weapons. They lied to the world. And now the question is, how do you frame their march forward?
Both the senators and ambassador agree that U.S. support for Israel is unwavering.
All of us believe it's a good investment in America's national security to have a strong and capable Israel. So no matter the outcome of the election, there's not going to be any major change in support for Israel, no matter who is in charge of the House and the Senate.
The Israeli military released its final conclusions from the investigation into the shooting death of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Abu Akleh, a Christian Arab, was killed while covering an Israeli counterterrorism raid in the Palestinian refugee camp of Jenin in May. Her death sparked an international outcry and Palestinian accusations of war crimes. According to the military findings, it is not possible to unequivocally determine the source of the gunfire. However, there is high possibility that Ms. Abu Akleh was accidentally hit by IDF gunfire. The IDF chief of staff emphasized that Israeli soldiers had been shooting at terrorists who were firing at them. Abu Akleh's former employer, Al Jazeera's bureau chief, blasted the report and accused Israel of lying. Her family credited U.S. pressure for the report, but called for an independent investigation. Later, a U.S. State Department spokesman said the U.S. would press Israel to closely review its policies and practices on rules of engagement and consider additional steps to mitigate the risk of civilian harm, protect journalists, and prevent similar tragedies in the future. Prime Minister Yair Lapid rejected the call, saying Israel never deliberately shoots innocent people.
We're committed to the freedom of the press and to the strictest opening fire rules in the world. I will not allow an IDF soldier that was protecting himself from terrorist fire to be prosecuted just to receive applause from abroad. No one will dictate our open fire policies to us when we're fighting for our lives.
Israeli and German leaders marked the 50th anniversary of the Munich Olympics massacre. During the 1972 Summer Games, Palestinian terrorists took Israeli athletes and coaches hostage, murdering 11 of them and a German policeman. At the ceremony, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier asked forgiveness for multiple failures of his country.
We can't make up for what happened or for what you experienced and suffered in the way of resistance, ignorance, and injustice. That ashames me. That's why I offered an apology in Munich 5 years ago, and I add today, as this country's head of state, and in the name of the Federal Republic of Germany, I seek your forgiveness for the inadequate protection of the Israeli athletes at the Olympic Games in Munich, and for the inadequate resolution afterward, for the fact that what happened could happen.
It's been almost half a century, but this is an important, moral, and just step toward the victims, the families, and history.
Coming up, the impact of the Abraham Accords on the Palestinians. The second anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords is coming up. We spoke with former Israeli intelligence officer Avi Melamed about where the Accords are heading and the impact they're having on the Palestinians. We're approaching the 2-year anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords. Do you think other countries will still join those accords, or do you think maybe they've lost a little bit their momentum?
I do not expect other Gulf monarchies like the Saudis, Qatar, Oman, and Kuwait to join in formally. But it's not necessarily has to do anything with momentum. It's because of other calculations. So in the foreseeable future, I don't see those states joining formally to the Abraham Accord.
What impact do you think these renewed talks with Iran towards a nuclear deal, what impact is that having on the way the Abraham Accords are viewed in the Middle East, on the way Israel is viewed?
The Gulf monarchies who are severely threatened by the Iranians are seeking to have normal relations with the Iranians. They are saying to Iran, look, we are neighbors and we want to have a good relationship. We just want you to keep out of our business. The Mullah regime in Tehran has different perspectives, as we all know. Now, the story of the Abraham Accord doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow morning we are not going to see the renewal of relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It will happen probably sometime down the road. And other players in the region, the Gulf monarchies like Qatar and Kuwait already and Oman already have good and going on a relationship with the Iranians. That being said, we have to take into consideration that the Arab Gulf monarchies know exactly who is the bully that lives next to them. And they have zero trust in the Iranian, and they have a very good reason not to trust the Iranians. Meaning that in the context of the Abraham Accord, the Arab Gulf monarchy would, on the one hand, renew the relationship with Iran, strive to have a normal sort of like relationship with Iran. But on the other hand, I find it very difficult to believe that they will drop the Israeli card from their possession, because in the end of the day, Israel is viewed by them as a very significant potential partner for a long-term strategic interest. And one of them, not the only one, is the issue of the Iranian threat.
So is there anything else you would want to add regarding the Abraham Accords or how you see the Middle East moving these days?
Well, look, regarding the Abraham Accords, I think that it's a very significant point to note in that context. It is in the context of the impact on the Israeli-Palestinian trajectory. The Palestinians, it's not a secret, were very disappointed, and they have been using some very harsh terms to express their discontent with the Abraham Accords, bordering also issues of like, it's a treachery. The Arab world has been betraying the Palestinians. They are throwing the Palestinians under the bus, and so on and so on. But in the end of the day, the Palestinians know exactly the balance of power in the region. They are part of the Arab world. and they do need significantly the support and the friendship of particularly the major Arab Gulf players, Egypt, and so on and so on.
Up next, a rare First Temple era document is returned to Israel through an intelligence operation. An extremely rare document from the First Temple period has been returned to Israel through an intelligence operation, and everyone is asking, who are you, Ishmael? The addressee on the document.
Today, what's been revealed is one of only 3 documents discovered dating to the First Temple period, 3 papyri, which contain documents dating back some 2,600 years.
Joe Uziel of the Israel Antiquities Authority says the recently revealed document contains 4 lines of ancient Hebrew script.
It's some kind of document written between 2 administrators or officials within the administration. One of them, we don't know his name, he's the sender, but the receiver's name is Yishmael because the letter notes Le Yishmael, to Yishmael, and then he's asked or ordered, depending on how you interpret it, to send some sort of commodities.
The bottom of the papyrus is missing, so the commodities are unknown. As to why it's here, fast forward thousands of years.
We don't know exactly when it was found. It was found by looters and taken to the Rockefeller Museum. But at some point in the 60s, it is given to a woman who is visiting Israel from the United States. And she takes it back home with her and she frames it along with a picture of the curator of the Rockefeller Museum and an antiquities dealer who is known to have been involved in the sale of scrolls.
When the woman passed away, she gave the relic to her son.
The anti-robbery unit of the Israel Antiquities Authority, together with Professor Achituv, become aware of this document's existence. They create a connection with this person in the US, who then comes to visit our unit here of the Israel Antiquities Authority and the laboratories and is convinced that this is the place to keep this document.
2 other papyrus documents tell their own stories of that time period.
The one being unveiled right now is the first one found, which actually is an interesting document because it has 2 layers of text. It's called a palimpsest. So the original layer of text was written, and that at some point in time, it was erased in order to recycle the papyrus and use it once again to write a second layer of text.
The second papyrus is like a receipt.
This is another papyrus describing the sending of wine from Me'arata, a site somewhere, we're not exactly sure where, to Yerushalema, to Jerusalem. And this is the earliest mention of Jerusalem in ancient Hebrew script.
All 3 ancient relics come from the Judean desert, where the dry climate preserved them. Repatriating the Ishmael document is part of the Israel Antiquities Authority's process to prevent illegal sales and further plundering of cultural heritage. Still ahead, another unique archaeological find from First Temple times. For the first time, Israeli archaeologists have uncovered rare pieces of ivory from the First Temple period. It provides more clues about life in that ancient Bible time. These decorative pieces help experts continue to put together the historic puzzle of Jerusalem from more than 2,500 years ago.
We found a complete corpus of small ivory plates, inlays that used to decorate large wooden furnitures, for example, beds or doors or something like that. It's the first time that are found here in Jerusalem or in Judea.
The discovery of some 1,500 tiny pieces happened at the sprawling City of David dig site in the ruins of a large palatial building that would have been in use as far back as 800 BC.
And it means that Jerusalem was an important city, that the elite of Jerusalem were people of high rank, important enough to communicate with their peers at the elite of Assyria and other places in the empire.
Israel Antiquities Authority archaeologist Yiftach Shalev says the items were most likely made outside of Israel.
It's a very delicate art. You need to remember that ivory is most probably one of the most prestige and most expensive items in the world, more expensive than gold. And only few people knew how to work with it.
Shalev says it's not clear how the ivory pieces arrived in Jerusalem.
They might come as part of trade, or even more likely came as gift between peer-polity interaction. Maybe one of the elite families in Assyria gave these as gift for the local elites or something like that.
Shalev says the structure where the tiny fragments were discovered is historic in its own right.
We're digging one of the largest structures from the First Temple period ever to be found in Jerusalem. It had 2 stories. We found the house destroyed. It was burnt in huge fire, most probably during the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BCE.
Archaeologists also found seals in 15 broken jars that contained wine spiced with vanilla. Given these discoveries, Shalev says, it's clear the residents were part of elite Jerusalem and well connected to the royal family. That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. And remember, the God who is watching over Israel, and you and me, neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.